My name is Dylan. I'm in rabbinical school. I'm a male to female transsexual. I am Asperger's. I'm dyslexic, blind. I'm in a wheelchair. I have EDS. I have dysarthria, so I use AAC, and have non-epileptic seizures and epilepsy. I'm a musician and filmmaker, and I have a BA in history and an MBA in music business.
My name is Margot. I'm a biology student at Penn State Harrisburg, a disability activist, and an independent filmmaker. I have cerebral palsy.
What is the Paul Fogle Award?
So, the Paul Fogle Award is a award that Pennsylvania Youth Leadership gives out to disabled activists. Paul Fogle was an activist that was one of the founding members of Pennsylvania Youth Leadership Network, and he unfortunately passed away. I don't know of what because that was not made public. But he had what appears to be a physical disability, and quite a significant one at that. So every year they give out this as a way of continuing his legacy because he made some pretty big changes to the Pennsylvania disability rights special education scene. And I, this year, happened to be the person that got the award. The official thing that the award is supposed to be for, according to the Pennsylvania Youth Leadership Network, is it says the Paul Fogle Disability Service and Advocacy Award of Excellence honors the legacy of Paul Fogle, a dedicated advocate who believed deeply in empowering individuals with disabilities to influence systems and create communities. So I was nominated by somebody in my community college who I had done some public speaking for. She saw this little advertisement that had gone out for nominations, and she decided that I, in her mind, fit that because I'm trying to create community with the activism that I do through film, helping kids, helping adults. And she put it through, and I was not expecting to get the award because I figured there was probably a lot of other nominations, and I thought it was also wrongly, I thought it was partially based on how long that you had been in Pennsylvania and how much of an impact you made on Pennsylvania. And then I was informed that what I had done for Pennsylvania, as well as what I had done while living in other places, factored into the win. So that made me very happy that they felt that what I was doing was helping Pennsylvania and other communities in the disability rights realm. I went there, I got the award, and by there I mean Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's given out at the Bridging Knowledge to Know conference, and I went there and they had a whole ceremony where they read off the things that I did that the person submitted me for, and I was very happy to have that happen.
Our second award tonight is the Paul Fogle Disability Service and Advocacy Award of Excellence. The Paul Fogle Disability Service and Advocacy Award of Excellence recognizes a young adult with a disability, ages 21 through 35, who demonstrates outstanding leadership and self-advocacy and disability advocacy. Honoring the legacy of Paul Fogle, a dedicated advocate who believed in empowering individuals with disabilities to use their voices, influence systems, and create more inclusive communities, this award celebrates young leaders who advocate for themselves and others, who also promotes accessibility and inclusion, advances disability rights in their schools, workplaces, and communities through their leadership, their service, and meaningful action. This year, I am very excited to bring on stage Margot. And is a biology student at Penn State Harrisburg. She's originally from Brooklyn, New York. She has been in PA since 2022, and in that short time has done some very amazing things. She worked in an after-school program for kids with autism ages 6 to 11 while in Brooklyn. She works remotely with Umbrella Children's Theater Company in New Mexico and assists with rehearsals and child actors. Margot has been in the independent film scene since 2010. She's produced, directed, written, and acted in four films that are available on YouTube for free, and has a fifth film that debuts this fall. And I will tell you, if you check in with her, she has a link that you can follow her with. So I am now a faithful follower. Margot works with her crew to accommodate a wide variety of abilities so they can all shine on the silver screen. She has spoken to college classes on many occasions, and she has left a lasting impression. Her honesty about her own experience with cerebral palsy and her in-depth knowledge of the history of disability rights have educated us without preaching. It's an approach that has always gained the respect of the students and has made them aware of the importance of their advocacy for neurodivergent individuals. And yes, there's more. We have some fantastic people here, so I'm going to keep talking about Margot. The Accessibility Club at Penn State, Harrisburg, elected Margot as president. She has served since the fall of 2023. Her vision includes fostering an inclusive culture, and as a result of her dedication and leadership, Penn State Harrisburg has instituted Disability Awareness Week for the first time in the fall of 2023. It has now become an annual event. Margot's message is that disability community matters and have stories worth telling, and she continues to tell those stories to the Special Education Advisory Panel this past February and beyond. Congrats to Margot.
What does the Paul Fogle Award mean to you?
So I happened to, when I got the award, I met some of the family friends of Paul Fogle, and what I saw was for the special education realm of Pennsylvania, he's kind of like their version of Judy Heumann. And so I was happy to, in a sense, carry a little bit of his legacy for them and let them know that, like, he wasn't forgotten and that his life mattered and sort of continued on in the spirit of others. I felt happy that people felt that I was doing things in such a way where I was building bridges, building communities. I wasn't creating strife or any of these negative things that I've seen in the disability movement. And it made me happy that the methods that I was employing to help people were actually making an impact that was getting noticed.
How will you use it to further your disability rights career in media and outside media?
Yeah. So what I'm hoping is that because of this award, as I try to do bigger and better projects with Crip Video, that it will be taken more seriously. And in a more general sense, I hope a bunch of younger disabled people look at it and they see like that could be possible for me. That could be something that I can end up doing, that I could earn with enough effort if I put enough effort into it. So I hope that it serves as a bit of a thing of me being a role model, and also just allows me to, in a sense, have a little leverage in the industry as well.
Can you break down the decisions you made that lead to getting the award?
So that was quite interesting. What ended up happening was I was working with some disability rights groups in New York when I lived there, and I noticed that I didn't like some of the things they were doing because they were basing a lot of it off of I'm bitter and everything is about me and my identity, and I didn't really want to go on that path. So I made my own production company, and I said, this is going to be about what I feel my life is like and, the stories that I want to tell, rather than, kind of forcing something down somebody's throat. And in the process of making these films and showing them, I started doing a lot of public speaking on disability, particularly physical disability, because that's where I have the most experience in terms of knowing how to accommodate. And then as I got to know wonderful people like you, Dylan, I started to expand out into being able to accommodate others. And then one of the uh, speakers that I had, done these things for, decided to nominate me for this. So I was very impressed with that. And then the other aspects that I got the award for, like working with Teatro Paraguas and Umbrella Children's Theater, that was nothing more than just wanting to continue the legacy of the people that started that children's theater and making sure those kids got the wonderful experience that I had of performing on stage and being an actor and not have their ability to be an actor questioned just because they were disabled and just have them treated as wonderful human beings, because that's what they do. So I was simply continuing the things that I felt were healthy and happy for me, and it paid off. I forgot. So when I was doing activism in New York, I was around age 14, 15. I made my first film at 15 years old. And what I saw was a lot of, it is somebody's fault that I'm disabled, and I'm blaming able-bodied people for my being disabled. I don't know where this bitterness came from in them, but I found this to be a very toxic way of doing media. So I said, I'm going to follow a different life-affirming model of everybody has a voice, everybody should be the right to free speech. So, like, parents have a voice, teachers have a voice, disabled people have a voice, and it's like it shouldn't be this monolith of only disabled people or only insert identity matter, which is the model that a lot of people in New York were following. And also, a lot of the kids I work with they are kind of in that, what Pennsylvania would call transition age. So, like 16 to about 21 that they're also working with. So, a lot of the conference is focusing on how do you make the transition from the protections that you have under IDEA and transfer into ADA protections in the colleges and stuff like that. So I really like that they're doing that, and they feel that in some ways I've helped with that in a very small way for some of these kids. And I will say it was not easy. But one of the influences was I was adopted, and my mom had this very life-affirming way of raising me, of introducing me to healthy influences. I had acting mentors with disabilities that influenced my directing style. Um, and I enjoyed getting different perspectives from able-bodied people because sometimes they'll let me in on something like, oh, the reason why that isn't done is because when this happens, this doesn't happen when it should, and things like that. And that's something that I think is valuable because if you have more people in the room, you're able to troubleshoot more. Like I remember I was on my campus and there was a problem with the automatic buttons, and they let me talk to the person in maintenance, and he's like, "Oh, those buttons actually cost $30,000 each button." And that was not something I was aware of, like the actual like logistics that the school has to go through to fix each one each time. And it was very insightful for me to hear that. Whereas, some activists, they'll be like, I don't want to know about the costs. I don't want to know about what's involved. And I'm just going to scream at people. And I didn't want to do that because I saw that wasn't working. You need inputs from everybody so you can, at the very least, meet everybody halfway. When I work with actors that have different impairments. Sometimes I have a deaf actor working with a blind actor, and I have to give two different signals at the same time because the sensory disabilities are different. You're not ever going to make everybody happy, but if you can at least somewhat address everybody's concerns and try to come to some sort of solution, that would be good. That's why my grandmother jokingly called me the diplomat. When she started to see my film work. She died before I really went into it more specifically, but I liked that she called me that. Even though I wasn't specifically trying to be a UN diplomat, she would make the joke that I should be. Uh, so I thought that was funny.
Okay.
What is the Bridging Knowledge to Know conference?
So the Bridging Knowledge to Know conference is a conference put on by PATN, which is Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, and the description of it is empowering Pennsylvania educators and partners. The conference brings together Pennsylvania educators, community partners, families, and youth to explore latest insights, strategies, and tools that bridge the gap between knowledge and practical application. Sessions focus on autism, sensory disabilities, secondary transition, and students with complex medical and instructional needs. So, my understanding with Bridging Knowledge to Know from people that were there that explained it to me is Pennsylvania has a lot of these special education conferences. So, Bridging Knowledge to Know is actually a combination of three different conferences that were now using the same space under the same banner. There was like ones that were more focused on, you know, disabled people talking about things, and there were ones where it was mainly teachers, and there was one that was autism only, I think. This is, as I was networking, this is sort of what they told me. I don't know, like, how much of it is actually the case, but they combined all of them together and they put it on in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's usually in a place called State College, Pennsylvania, but for whatever reason, they moved it to Lancaster this time. So I had an excuse to get my spastic butt up to Lancaster, which was a lot of fun. Uh, Unfortunately, I had to go through a lot of extra steps to get there, but I was happy I did it.
What was the accessibility level like?
So that part of the conference was really cool. We were given ADA compliant rooms, and I saw a fun feature that I have never seen in a hotel room. It actually came with the shower bench. And like the bathtub was one of the most beautiful things accessibility wise I have ever seen. I'm like, I want one of these in my house. And the toilet was the same setup in the hotel room. That was great. And even though, like, when they ordered the room, they weren't sure if my wheelchair was gonna, like, be able to roll in the room while it was open. It was. And if I wanted to, I could, like, stay sitting and roll right up to the hotel room bed. That was great. I've never seen that before. Another interesting thing that happened in terms of accessibility at this conference was they had a little stage that I was gonna get up on. And they had stairs, similar to what I had experienced on different campuses, particularly when I was at CUNY. And I figured, oh, it's going to be one of these setups where they're not going to be able to put the ramp down because there's not enough space, I had assumed. I told every one of our friends, like, I'm just gonna, go up the stairs with my crutches because that's what I'm used to doing when I do these kind of presentations. I've gotten academic awards before. And he's like, no, that's unacceptable. We are going to put a ramp there. And I'm like, I don't even know if you can do that. Um, and like they kept calling me like, what do you ideally want? Do you want to walk up the ramp with your crutches? Do you want to have your wheelchair and stuff? And I'm like, do I actually have a choice in the matter? And he's like, here you do. So I told them just so they could like see me on stage that I wanted to use the crutches. So he's like, okay, we will make that happen. And I'm like, I don't really think that's going to go anywhere because in past experience, that has never been a thing where they would actually make a change like that. And I come down a few hours later because they have food in the room where the thing is, and I see that they have a ramp down. And I look at, my buddies, and I'm like, what did you guys do? And they're like, they found the ramp. And meanwhile, I'm picturing in my head, did they like threaten them with a chainsaw? Did they scream at them? I don't know. Because I've never had a venue actually like go ahead and put the time in to do that. Somebody the next day told me it took about 20 minutes for them to actually get it out and like secure it to the stage. I don't actually know what happened behind the scenes, but whatever you guys did to put the ramp down, thank you, because that was a lot of fun. I got to scramble up the ramp. Of course, my alignment was terrible because I was like so excited that my tailbone was all the way up in the air. And I know a certain mentor of mine who's going to be watching this is going to be like, don't do that. And I know I wasn't supposed to do it, but I was too happy. Uh, so I give them a lot of credit for that. The f food situation for the people that had special dietary needs was great. They had like a separate thing where the disabled person in private could say, you know, I'm one of the ones that had a special food order, and it was done very discreetly. Everybody got exactly the food that they needed or wanted. Um, I didn't do that, so I just ate, you know, the regular junk food that they had, which I thought was pretty good. Um, so I would say they did a great job. It was a nice flat space, so the wheelchair and the crutches could go over the space. It wasn't like too horribly large, at least for me. The one note that I did hear from other chair users is the carpet created a little bit of drag on the wheelchairs. I didn't really sense that with the way my chair is, but apparently some people had a little bit of a carpet drag issue. But overall, everything could be viewed from a wheelchair just fine. There was captions on everything. They had ASL interpretation for the entire ceremony. They had audio description for the ones where blind people were being focused on. It seemed like what was done was like if somebody requested the audio description, it was turned on, but it was not generally turned on for the ones that weren't focused on blind, although I didn't see too many of the sessions, but the ones I did see that it was like an option if it needed to be turned on. So kudos on that for sure.
What did you like about the conference?
So I loved the accessibility of the conference because in most of my life, particularly before moving to Pennsylvania, I did not have that level of accessibility. I liked that the parents had a space where they could get resources, particularly for younger kids, where they're just learning to navigate disability and chronic illness and other rare diseases. I liked that everybody had kind of a voice in this thing, and there was a ability to, if you didn't like something, you could say what you didn't like, and you were allowed to say, like, I wish this were improved, or I wish that was improved. Very rarely do I go to an event where you're allowed to say what you want, and I was given full freedom to do that. I also really liked the resources that were given at this conference. They had resources for people who use AAC devices. They had resources for people that use Braille. They had resources for people that were deaf and used hearing aids and cochlear implants. They had also a speaker talking about cochlear implants, and the part of her speech that I really liked was she explained that a cochlear implant is not hearing, and it does not make you more able-bodied. So that part of her speech I thought was right on. She also showed a really neat picture of what a cochlear implant looks like when it is implanted into the brain, which for a biology student, that was fun. Because I usually don't get to see things like that. Um, and I like that they were trying to share updated research on whatever it was that they were doing. Most of these were teachers, physical therapists, or other disabled people in professional fields that were adjacent to that. So it was an interesting dynamic. It had a little bit less of the disability related voice that I've seen in other spaces like this, where like disabled people are doing most of the talking. So it was interesting to see.
What could be improved about the conference?
So, like I said, loved a lot of it, and I love just being able to spend time with my friends there and meet some new people. But the things I think could be improved were there was a speaker who I won't name names here, but this particular speaker was speaking in a way that was really unclear in terms of their disability, where this person was wording it in such a way that it sounded like she was saying, I'm literally not disabled in certain spaces. And this was something that I remembered from my activism years ago, where when they are trying to articulate social model, which is a good model for disability, they make the mistake of making it like it's literally society that is causing the neurologic or physical parts of the disability rather than just talking about the accessibility. If she meant accessibility, that would be something else. And I think that's probably what she meant, but she wasn't wording it in a way where particularly an able-bodied person can understand it. It sounded a little too literal, the way she was saying it, and she kind of spoke for a little too long. So I think some of the speakers, in order to have room for the discussion, they should leave a little extra space for the Q&As before moving on to the next one and just kind of structure that better so you don't have those kind of errors. There was also a lot of, I think the researchers and educators there were good people and they had the best of intentions, but it was a lot of, we're going to teach an autistic person how to behave as if they're able-bodied. And the model seemed almost like, oh, if we teach them the social behavior, it will always work with every single person they interact with. And this made me acutely uncomfortable because just knowing autistic people, that kind of model doesn't work. And they weren't really accounting for, does the autistic person have co-occurring disabilities? Does the autistic person even care about the behavior that's being taught? And why are they not explaining to the autistic person why this behavior might matter to an able-bodied person so they can decide whether or not they care about, giving that able-bodied person that social signal. And it seemed like a lot of the kids they were working with had probably co-occurring memory issues or something that had nothing to do with their social functioning because it seemed like there was multiple things going on that weren't really being addressed. And, I told one of my friends, this is making me kind of uncomfortable, that it's sort of about the disabled person without really thinking about the nothing about us without us idea. And he said, you can say that. So I did. Nicely, of course, but I saw that there was a lot of just like projecting what would make a able-bodied neurotypical comfortable rather than what was really in the best safety interest of the disabled people that they were talking about. So I think that needs to be improved. Also, some of the paperwork for some of the conference was a mess because there was a camp going on separately. So one person made a remark that I somehow, because I had the award, I could speak for all disabilities. I cannot. So that also made me uncomfortable. I can only speak to what I've learned from other people and then what, what cerebral palsy feels like to me, but I can't speak for everyone else. And, my views are not their views. So please do not assume that I speak for all disabled people at once.
What did you learn from the conference?
So I learned quite a few interesting things from the people that were vendors kind of advertising their thing on the side of the speakers. And I learned that the settings for AAC devices, they had people from Tobii Dynavox at this conference, and that was really fascinating to me. And I asked them, how would you switch in between languages? And they showed me how you would toggle back and forth from English to Hebrew in one of these devices. There's a little, from what I could see on the screen, there's a little button that says core, and you would flick in between the two, and it would flick between languages. And you could have one language operate in pictures and the other one operate in text. like where you could read what the button says and press it down, and it had screen reader compatibility. It could connect like an iPad to any web-enabled device, which I thought was really cool because, this day and age, everybody wants to connect like headphones and all of these other features to these kind of things. The other thing that I thought was really cool was there was somebody with another AAC related display where she was showing how they teach people that don't normally use AAC, like say a parent or a teacher, how the device actually works, by having a program in there that allows the able-bodied or just non-AAC user understand what the symbols mean, understand what the words mean, and how to program it for what the disabled person wants to say, which I have never seen that before, and it was really colorful and fun looking. So that was definitely a good tool that now the industry is figuring out. Yeah, some of the non-disabled people need to learn how the disabled people are functioning in order to communicate with us. And an extension of that I liked was I found out that sighted people can sight read Braille because I spoke to somebody that was showing me how these different digital braillers work. They kind of look like computers, but when you press on them, it pops out Braille rather than English. And he was saying, well, I can actually sight read the Braille and teach somebody how to use this. And I'm like, I didn't know people could sight read Braille. And then I told the person that I was Russian, and I said, does Braille have an equivalent to Russian Cyrillic letters? And he said, yeah. And he said that they got an order from Russia to have 500 of these Braillers sent to Russia with the Russian translation, switched on in the Brailler. So I wonder where those 500 Braillers ended up. That sounded fascinating, who those people might have been, and what they were using it for. So yay, Braille. The other interesting thing with these digital braillers is it can connect to any other device, so like a laptop or an iPad, so you can connect it to an AAC device because everything is a computer nowadays. That is really cool and a really useful tool for somebody that has multiple impairments because even though the industry doesn't think so, most disabled people have more than one disability as they get older. So this is a good thing. I think it was called the Light Touch Brailler. He said that you get a regular brailler and you put an attachment on it that looks kind of like a keyboard key, but a little wider. And a person that has tremors or a spastic hand can press on this with doing a very light touch. So even if they're like this, they can go like that with it and have it be triggered, and sort of programmed to fit that person. Um, and there's ways of writing Braille where you don't need to use the thing that looks like a stencil. You can do it almost as if you're typing on a computer instead to get around inaccessibility with the thing that looks like a stenciler, which I've only seen in movies. I've not seen a real one. I've only seen these computerized sort of braillers that they had there. What I was saying was, while I was looking at the braillers, they also had a smart white cane, and I can only guess what that might be for. Because on the, little advertisement thing, they said, like, same as a white cane, but way smarter and connects to Bluetooth and internet. And I'm like, what would you need to connect a white cane to the internet for? So that was fascinating to me. And also another thing that I liked was they were also allowing different disabled people that had entrepreneurial products to sell those products at the conference. So that was a good move.
What does the future hold for Crit Video Productions?
So, coming up very soon, the collaboration project that we were working on with director Marilyn Navarro, What the Body Believes, is going to be coming out, probably about a couple of weeks from the release of this video. And then after that, we have another full-length documentary that we're releasing that has right now the working title, What the Body Knows. And then after that, we are hoping to do a number of short fictional films covering different topics, including possibly adoption and some LGBT representation. And then we have a history of cerebral palsy documentary that will come out after that. Not to mention a bunch of other ones that we have in the works that are not ready to be announced yet.
What advice would you give to a disabled activist who wants to get to this point?
So, to somebody that is starting out in their activism, I would say listen to different perspectives around you. Always accept mentoring, even if you're a much older person, you can never like be done learning from other people and other research that's been done. Other big piece of advice is watch your mental health when you're doing activism. Give yourself mental health breaks from it, because if you do it too much, it will become something that you don't want to be doing. So definitely have a part of your life that is, the activism, and then a part of your life that's just for you. And keep trying to build bridges around people instead of pushing people away if you can. Try to, in the words of Dylan's company, build a coalition around you instead of separating people. Because the more people that can help, the better. And also be aware that some people have specific needs that are opposite of other people's needs, and you may have to negotiate that as well.
You say that people should be open to working with all different types of people,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you're implying that you want people to be true to themselves. How does one not fall prey, be true to themselves, work with different types of people, but at the same time be not fall prey to bad ideas?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think somebody always has to use their own judgment of what they think is right and wrong. But what I'm simply referring to that I've seen in activism is they'll see something that makes them uncomfortable, and then anytime they're around that kind of person, they're like, this person has nothing to contribute at all, and that can also cause problems. So like always keep your morals when you're doing it. So if you feel that something is morally questionable, obviously don't go towards that, but understand why your opposition feels the way they do so you can articulate the way you feel. I always study people that I disagree with so I can say, I hear your concern, but this is why I don't morally or activism wise believe in this policy or this idea or think this or this is good or bad. Because if you don't understand what you're fighting against, you can't explain your point of view.
Okay, I have two follow-up questions
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
What are the guiding principles you use to determine whether a certain thing is good or bad for the disabled or not, or good or bad for anything?
Yeah. So for me, anything where the person is like, this is always the case, is a big red flag for me, because everything is going to, particularly when you're dealing with disability, depend on that particular person's body. So I once heard this in a women's rights, context, and the person was saying in the post, women always feel bad during this part of a pregnancy. And that just really made me uncomfortable, because just from a women's rights perspective, no woman ever feels the same way about a particular thing. There's some universal, like, morally bad things, but like in terms of like bodily experience, you can never like say this is always this or this always happens this way. And I noticed that in activism, people tend to use a lot of exceptions or exaggerated stories to try to make policy that doesn't always apply to the situation. I hope that was clear. I've never been asked that question before.
I think I've worked in a lot of activism too.
Hmm.
Um, we both have over the years, and I think the way to stay true to yourself and be good at is requires two things:
Mm-hmm.
knowledge of what you're fighting for,
Mm-hmm.
not just the philosophy, the public policy, but also um uh
I know for
the
you, it's like the
importance,
history behind it too.
right? Yeah, also the importance of knowing the history of the thing you're
Mm-hmm.
fighting for. So when it comes to the question of giving advice, as you give advice to disabled activists, what would you say has been the influence of disability history as it pertains to the influence of your work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. One of my big influences is you, of course, because you knew all of this. The other influence I had was one of my mentors was CP, was very much into history himself. So before Crip Camp even came out, he was kind of telling me those stories. I didn't know like the specific names, like Judy Human, but I knew from him the basic history, like that there was a sit-in and what the IDEA was and what the ADA was, in a basic sense. And then when I was homeschooling, that was actually in the textbook, where we had to learn about Gallaudet. And that really helped me to see, like, okay, this movement's been going on a while, and that's why I have rights in high school
Uh,
and college.
could you just briefly, for people that don't know, you refer to Gallaudet, the sit-in.
Hmm.
Um, for those that don't know, um, and you refer to that idea, can you just quickly talk about what you're referring to
Yeah, no
for those
problem.
who don't know?
No problem. So Gallaudet, from what I was taught back then, was, a deaf school, and they had appointed a president of the school that was hearing, and the deaf students were not having it. And they protested in sign language, and they protested with their voices, and they basically shut the whole school down until the school listened to, we don't want, you know, the implication that we're so incapable that a hearing person needs to leave the school. Um, and that's how they got their rights and who they felt represented them. The same way as when people vote, they pick who they feel would represent them. But a little louder and a little bit more entertaining.
Um, also, um, you referred to the sit-in,
Yeah.
for
So
those that don't know.
yeah, so what I was referring to, and if people want to see actual footage of it, watch Crip Camp on Netflix. But
What's Crip Camp?
that's a documentary on Netflix about the general history of the disability rights movement and how it essentially started at a camp for disabled people. And the movie goes chronologically through every big event in disability rights through these group of characters led by Judy Human, who you should read the book of. She's a major Jewish disability activist and a bit of my idol. There's a book called Being Human that she wrote as well. She's our gal. Dylan also did a tribute to Miss Judy Human where you can hear her entire life story. Please watch. So,
We'll
mhm,
link it in the description.
exactly. That will be linked. And the IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act that provides education rights to like the K-12 level of education. And then the ADA is like pretty much everything that pertains to adults, as well as kids, in the outside world. And then like the college system operates under the ADA. So that means ramps, open captions, lovely audio descriptions, basically all the things that Crip Video provides as far as accessibility on the films as part of ADA compliance. And then, you have the ramps, you have the braille on the elevators, the curb cuts, that's all ADA. And it
Uh,
spans many more things than that, but that's just the ones I know off the top of my head, including accessible hotel rooms. Shout out Lancaster Marriott.
okay. You referred to the sit-in.
Yeah, the 504 sit-in. this was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. They took over, I think it was called Office of Welfare or something at that point. It was a bunch of disabled people. They wanted Section 504 passed. That's a law that prevents discrimination in all federally funded spaces for disabled people. And nobody wanted to pass it. So a bunch of lovely cripples said, all right, we're taking over your building. And they ended up in the news. This was my favorite scene in Crip Camp. The newscaster is saying, the cripples have taken over the building.
So, let me, um, just to clarify some of the history. Okay, so the Section 504 setting was not actually about the law. The
It
law
was
in
it
and of
was it was
itself,
like a section of it. That's what
right,
it's
right.
sectioned
The
off.
Section 504 pertains to the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act,
Right. There,
which
there was
refers
portions of
to,
it that weren't like active or passed at that
right,
point. Yeah.
well, that weren't enforced.
Right.
In so doing, the idea was there were a lot of arguments being used, but basically, out of the Rehabilitation Act, there was Section 504, which in all public government areas, a person couldn't be discriminated against on the basis of disability.
Right.
That's what Section 504 was about, relating to public accommodations, particularly relating to government buildings, government functions, that kind of thing. That was what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the sit-in was that was run out of an administrative secretary at the time. A bunch of disabled people said, well, we'll just take over our local federal building of that particular administrator
Mm-hmm.
and we'll just take it over. And then until we get what we want, i.e., this Section 504 enforced,
We ain't
we
budging.
will we will not leave no matter what you do to us.
Right. And the way
So
they got food was they signed American Sign Language out the window so people wouldn't know what they were doing, which was really clever.
yeah, disability culture is filled with a lot of brilliant, rebellious, empowered, patriotic, disabled people who have done
Yes.
amazing things
Yes.
throughout time. Okay.
Excellent.
Next, next
Yes.
question. I hope you don't mind me chiming in there. I hope it
No,
doesn't undermine.
no, it's totally fine. It's your channel.
What does it mean as an adoptee from Russia who would not have gotten an award like this and would have died young in that country?
Yeah, so people who may not be aware of my backstory, I lived in a Russian orphanage for a year before being adopted, and the general gist that I heard from Russians that I've met over the years is most people with CP in that country only live to about 6 years old because the medical and the therapies and stuff, and also the fact that a lot of them are orphans, things don't go well. It's also a very cold environment, so kids get sick a lot. So my hope would be that people know that like you can have a rough start in life and you can still have a great life regardless.
What does it mean as an American to get an award like this?
Well, for me, that was a little piece of what people call the American dream for me, because as I stated in the previous question, I start out as a little baby in Russia, and then just because I end up being a citizen here and I have the rights afforded to me by the Americans with Disabilities Act and all of these other things that these disability activists fought for, it gave me the tools that I needed to do this kind of work and help other people. And I think that is a uniquely American thing that a little immigrant baby could come into a country, get these rights afforded to her so she can get an education, meet people that from other countries even that inspired some of the stories, and then have that lead to an award. That's a very American thing to me. Most other places do not have anything even remotely close to that. And I am very grateful to the founders of America for building a structure where that could happen.
I have two questions.
Hmm.
For our founding fathers, what did they do exactly for you, which led to you being able to get this award?
In my mind, the biggest thing they did was the First Amendment of free speech that allowed me to say those things I needed to say in order to get all of that to happen.
What would happen if you said those things in Russia?
Probably the KGB would show up and I'd be disappeared. It's probably what would happen.
Yeah,
Especially with Putin in charge. Not a fan of him.
right. Let me ask you this question. In your
Hmm.
earlier answer, you brought up Judith Human.
Hmm.
What does it mean to you that Judy Human, our hero,
Hmm.
is actually her parents were Holocaust survivors? Well,
Yeah, I also think that is a great thing that somebody again could come out of that kind of terrible situation and raise a daughter that became the mother of the disability rights movement. And now we have people like me and Dylan that are now carrying that legacy, and people like Paul Fogle, who is also carrying that legacy, and then PYLN decides to pass his legacy to me through the awards. So I think it just comes full circle and it's a beautiful thing. And I think in terms of Judy Human, because her parents came from the Holocaust, which was the ultimate epitome of ableism, she knew why ableism was so dangerous and why it has to be fought against.
In what way did your disability identity play in getting this award, if any?
So some people, when they heard about the award, they thought that I mainly got the award because of my lived experience with CP, but it is actually way more broad than that, how that happened, because most of my knowledge of CP actually comes from mentors and reading literature about CP. Yes, I know internally what that feels like, but I didn't have the words to explain it until I had outside sources to supplement that. So my knowledge of CP at this point is a little bit more on the academic end rather than just what they would refer to as lived experience. And then the other things were related to acting skills or filmmaking skills that I had gained, not so much directly the disability. Yes, I'm writing about my life, and CP is a part of those stories, but I didn't, in my mind, like the effort that I put into it wasn't solely because of the disability or a discussion regarding identity. It was just I saw a need and I filled it and I earned it. The award, that is.